Did I hear we're ready?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm going to call the Planning and Development Committee meeting to order. And the first item is roll call, please.
Mrs. Root,
Here.
Mrs. Hanchett,
Here.
Mr. Barnes,
Present.
Mr. Curran,
Here.
Mr. Havey,
Here.
Mr. Healy,
Here.
Mr. Ricky,
Here.
Mrs. Ricketts-Wales,
Here.
and Mr. Harris.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. The next item is your approval of the June 20th minutes, and I'll entertain a motion.
Hanchett will move.
Hayfield second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Okay, I'm going to acknowledge today, as always, we have our monthly reports from Ashley Smith, Director of Economic Development. We have a report from Craig Clark, Industrial Development Agency, Keir Durham, Director of Planning, and Rita Sobek Lynch, Employment and Training Program Director. They are in our packet. They are in our minutes. We've had them, and we can, if we have any questions and we have time afterwards, we can always ask them, or we can contact them after the meeting. So next up, for the next 20 minutes, and maybe it won't take that long, we're going to talk about, again, this ongoing, unfinished business, old business, call it what you want, but we're going to talk about the process for the new Economic Development Organization. So I wanted to bring in our packets. There is a sheet that process for the new Economic Development Organization, the next 5 steps. We had a meeting last Thursday with a small work group that includes the chambers, land bank, IDA, the county, 2 county legislators, and county administrators, and we had a very, very lively discussion for over 2 hours on what these next steps are going to be. At the end of the meeting, I think we made some progress, and so we came up with these 5 steps. So, and Ashley's here, and I don't know, Ashley, if you want to come forward and be part of this discussion with those 5 steps. Do you have them? Oh, here. They were in our packet, so you didn't get it. Actually, they're somewhere in our packet.
I don't think they were in. They were here.
That's that.
It is.
Oh, there you go.
It's buried in my
It's
packet, Ashley.
page 8 of 13.
Yep, got it. So after a lengthy discussion and very animated discussion, we came up with these 5 steps. We talked about moving ahead with the 5013C, what it was going to take to do that. We needed to have a lawyer to do that. We talked about the possibility of going out and getting a Ralph Wilson grant. Chautauqua County went out and got a Ralph Wilson grant in the sum of $1 million that helped them start it up. So these were some of the discussions that we talked about. We also talked about we needed a budget for this new economic development. And we said a yearly budget so we can put together a budget so we knew how much money we needed, where those sources were, and how to start it. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Ashley, and I'll let you make some comments as you saw this and heard us talk about the next 5 steps, if you would.
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, and maybe it would be easier if I pause and just have you ask any questions that you might have, and that would help facilitate some of the conversation. Okay. In that case, I did think that the work session was really great communication. It was sort of the showcase for how the partnerships can look between the land bank and the IDA and the economic development group. I think the IDA has graciously offered to assist in trying to get the startup moving for this entity. And so that's laid out here in, I think, steps 1 and 2, which is the IDA looking to go after a Ralph Wilson grant or a grant that supports sort of the startup for organizing the structure of a 501c3. And then additionally, facilitating those funds up front to until the reimbursement comes back through. More conversation does need to be had relative to what the mission statement, mission, vision, values, and obviously the goals of the 501c3, but they're going to align with what the strategic plan is that you all adopted through the Camoin and Associates plan that was rolled out. And so I'm confident that all of that gets rolled into this process as well. As far as the budget goes, additional conversation needed on what that looks like. But overall, I don't see any issues with being able to execute these items relatively quickly.
So with that, I will open up to any questions that anyone has. Are we not clear? Yes, Steve. Start us off.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Just a quick question. In looking at these very quickly, my mind goes in this direction. It looks like we're asking to borrow $10,000 from the IDA until they get the Ralph Wilson grant to cover that. Is that what it is, or am I misunderstanding?
Oh, Craig is here. He can answer that.
More than likely, I've already talked to board members. We'll have to approve it.
Could you go up to the mic, please?
We will have to approve it at the next board meeting, but in talking to the board members, there will be no loan. We will fund the startup part as far as the lawyers.
It's also not going to the county. This is a separate entity that you're talking about, a 501c3 that'll be formed by people other than the county, and the IDA will be granting the money to that entity so that they can hire their own attorney and figure things out for that 501c3. The county will still need to work through Allison's office to figure out our own needs and how we interact with the 501c3 once it's up and running.
Okay, one more?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the IDA then is going to fund this. Does this mean that this 501c3 is going to be some branch of the IDA or anything like that? No?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
No, we're all in the same sandbox, playing together nicely. That's what I got out of it the other day, that we're all playing together and working together to try to make this happen. Any other questions? Gretchen, you want to? Yep, Jan?
So you're going to be an outside agency of the county, so where, do you have any idea, will you continue to be located in this building, or will you have separate offices somewhere?
I don't think we've fleshed out all those details. So unless Carissa has an answer that she would like to put out there.
I believe the working theory is that Ashley would continue to be a county employee, and we'd be hoping to have a contract with the 501c3 so that she could provide services to the 501c3 through her county employment. So she's working for us, but then whatever overlaps with the 501c3 would work. Being that this is a new entity, it doesn't have any cost associated with it. I have a feeling that we'll be helping to house that 501c3 until it has legs of its own and can find its own room.
Okay, any other questions? Gretchen, do you have any comments as your participation that day?
Yep. Well, we did meet and went through some of the different ways that we could kind of keep this moving forward. We do have options on putting it together. Certainly appreciate the IDA stepping up and giving us seed money to start the process of the 501c3, which I understand will take a while to get there. So we still are going to be working out the details on housing it, moving it forward, and what will be the best way to move it forward. So once again, I want to thank Craig and the IDA board for coming up with the seed money. But there's still quite a few things that need to be worked out, but it was a good start, and it was a good opportunity to listen to different opinions and work through them, because that's what you need in order to come up with a good decision. So that's my input, Chairman.
Thank you.
Comment.
Yes, comment.
Yes, I've heard a lot of positive remarks about this process from the public, and also about our new director so far. So everything seems to be positive along those lines. The question, of course, is why this has taken us so long to get this far, which is always one of my questions too. But I remind people that it's government, and nothing moves fast in government, and even slower if you have lawyers involved.
And probably to add a little bit to that too is with this new Economic Development Organization, EDO, what it's doing is really pulling a lot of partners together with different expertise in different areas. So it's the toolbox we keep using, that they can pull it out. So that's pretty tricky sometimes to kind of pull them together. I know the Cuba Chamber Director was there, and of course Jeff Steger were there, and they were pretty pleased that even through that lively discussions that we're finding ways to work through it, and that's sometimes the best way to come out with a positive outcome. And what's really important is to have it sustainable, because as it grows and finding other ways to sustain this, I mean, the county and some of our other counties, they do support it in some ways, but bottom line is it's going to be down the road a little bit, and finding that sustainability is going to be what's important. So thank you for all your work.
It's hard for me to concentrate. So what we have here are the next 5 steps. I keep bringing these back, I'm saying in baby steps, so we all can be in agreement as we move forward. And I don't want to move forward and then all of a sudden hit a roadblock. So that's why I keep bringing them to you in small increments to make sure that we're all on board, that it's very clear all along the way. And if what you see here today makes sense and you're all in agreement, if you can give me a thumbs up, this group will continue meeting and continue bringing back our accomplishments to the next meeting. Do I hear support for this to keep moving?
Deb, can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm looking at number 5, identify the board of directors.
Yes.
How will you figure that out? I mean, what qualifications will we be looking for?
We talked a lot about that, and who they would be. And Ashley, I'll let you answer that.
So I think for this point, it's maybe not necessarily the entire board over the 501c3. We sort of started with conversations on who was going to assist with the formation of the 501c3, and then we would broaden into what that actual board looks like. Where we came away from the meeting the other day was that, potentially we have 3 prospects, and you took the names, correct?
Kevin?
I know it was Kevin White. It was Jeff with a cord, and who was the third? I apologize. Deb. It was Deb. So that was, they're not really the board of directors, if you will, but it is sort of the formation board. And then as part of next steps will be to determine what the actual board of directors for the 501c3 looks like. So there hasn't been any conversation of who that would be. Yes.
So that was just an interim, temporary to get it up and running.
Yep.
But we did talk about, Jen, to fill it out, what the people are that we're looking at. We did have a written down at one point, I think it's in our bylaws for economic development, because they talked about an advisory board in that, and we identified by like sectors, industrial sectors, and so I think we still need to flesh it out, but we're looking at people who could sit on the board from businesses, from all aspects of the county, the colleges, education, and, even secondary education, but we need to flesh that out. So that will be coming back to us to agree on what is the makeup of that board.
And just to be really clear too, when it's its own entity, a 501c3, they figure it out. We can certainly have recommendations. I think one thing in the bylaws would be to make sure that we have representation, at least 1 or 2 spots from the county to keep that clear, so we don't get into trouble having a government entity in with that. So, that it comes, that's how the board is determined. Obviously, we have recommendations, which, any board putting it together would kind of look like for an economic development, to make sure they had the segments that are needed for a good overall input on the direction that this goes.
So that's exactly where I was going. Thank you both. The bylaws are actually a bullet point that either needs to make its way on to the next 5 and/or is going to be in the near future, because that is what dictates the board of directors.
So we have been looking at several counties. We have several counties' bylaws for what they did for their 501(c). We're looking at them right now, and that is, again, something that we will be bringing back to this committee again to look at and to see if you're in agreement with what the recommendation is.
Question.
Yes.
Board members would be limited to residents or could be former residents or people who have maybe technically are residents someplace else but still have a summer home or properties here. They have a lot of expertise.
They'll be determined by the new organizations as they pull together, and it will be put in their bylaws on certain things that they look for and what qualifies. So we're not to that point yet. It wouldn't be up to the legislators to determine that.
But you don't want to exclude them, is what you're saying?
Well, I know a couple, I think, that might be
Sure.
willing to
Yeah,
have a lot of
yeah.
contacts that might be willing
Yeah.
to serve that don't technically live in Allegheny County anymore, though they still maintain some property here.
I think we need the best people for the job, not DEI, if I can say that.
I do think it is something that we need to take into consideration, whether they are a county resident and/or not, to your point.
Okay, so I'm hearing to push forward. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Before we get to the action items, I asked Tim Boyd to put together a list of, we have a lot of grants going on, we have a lot of studies going on, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I was getting lost in what grants we had out there, where they were, where the matching funds were coming from. We have the $7.4 million that we targeted for economic development. I wanted to see how much of the funds were being used in these grants, matching funds, and the activities. So that's what we have. Does everybody have the, Tim, or just?
Everybody.
Everybody has them. So I will turn it over to you, Tim, if you want to just kind of run us through.
Sure. Well, thank you. As Deb indicated, she had asked me to put together this list, and if you look at the top part of this list is really the first monies that have come out of that $7.5 million allocation. $90,000 to address the Delta contract, the Delta development contract, and that's bifurcated over a couple of years. So some of the money is out of here, and I think we took some money out of another fund earlier on. We did a $450,000 service agreement over a 3-year period, so it's $150,000 a year over 3 years. There is $300,000 spent year to date. There's another $150,000 that's still included in that services agreement to cover calendar 2025. Then we entered into an agreement with Hunt Engineering specifically to look at the seeker and related activities that happen at the Gateway Center, and also to look at the construction of County Road 51, which is going to be, that work will be performed by DPW, so whatever the funds are associated with the construction of County Road 51 will come out of that $1 million grant, that's out of that $1 million allocation that's there. So those are the funds that are there. So we have approximately $5,960,000 remaining out of that 7.4 or 7.5. And then you can see moving forward that we have gone after a number of grants and done a number of, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say grants, studies. We did the GIS study, which was $55,000, and that was all covered by ARPA funds. We had the Eagle View and digital pictometry for $560,000. Our Camoin Associates strategic plan was $65,000. We have the Trails Improvement Plan at $321,000, the Wellsville Airport at $50,000, and the Art Alliance at $11,500. That all came out of ARPA funds, and that totals $1,062,500 that we've used our ARPA funds to address economic development activities. Then we also went after another pool of money through the federal appropriations, and that was some work that we had done through Delta and through the Appalachian Regional Commission. We did receive $483,000 from Congressman Langworthy. There is a match source that the county had set aside for that in the amount of $450,000 out of ARPA funds that is not required to be used. So that would then go back into your ARPA fund balance to be reallocated. We have a Trails and Parks Master Plan through the Appalachian Regional Commission. The grant amount for that is $70,000. The match would be $30,000. We have yet to determine what that source of match would be, whether that comes out of our fund balance or we look at another funding source. And then we had two projects that were funded through IIJA and through the Appalachian Regional Commission. The first was the countywide sewer study. That award was $560,000. And we also then secured a $100,000 consolidated funding allocation from the state that required a match. So we have $240,000 in match that is already covered through the ARPA and or whatever else we need to do with that. So that really is an $800,000 award for a countywide sewer study. So, and then the next one, this one's really tricky to kind of figure out, explain. The other part of the IIJA allocation was $740,000 to run the water line, the water, whatever kind of storage facility, whether we call it a tank, whether we call it a tower. That is $740,000. There was match required with that, so, but the overall total of that project is going to be approximately $1,997,900. So the county will need to determine where that other $1.2 million is going to come from and change, and it could be allocated out of that fund balance. But as of now, I'm sorry, and we have one more study that's on deck, and that's the housing study through the CDBG grant opportunity. That grant is $50,000. We anticipate, there's no match required on that, but we anticipate that grant is going to come out in the amount of $80,000. So we'll need to find another $30,000 to be determined, again, whether that's fund balance or another source. So those are all the projects that we have going on. Those are the match dollars that we have. And the only two that we need, the two small ones we need to find the money for, total $60,000. And then there's the 1.2 and change to complete the water line at the Gateway project. And that would be to connect the water source and run the line from current facility down to the proposed DPW site. So.
We've applied for some other grants, so also, is that correct?
Correct. We do have requests coming in. I believe there's a request for additional infrastructure that could cover this $1.2 million, and a congressional request is about three plus million. I think it's $3.26 million has been the ask to do those further enhancements at the Gateway project, and those have been included in Congressman Langworthy's funding allocation as well as Senator Schumer's funding allocation. So we're hopeful that we will find additional sources of revenue for those.
So will they require additional match for those?
It depends on the type of program that it is. So the funding source that we had for the Fairgrounds project was out of the THUD allocation. That does not require, that's the Transportation, Housing, Urban Development. That does not require a fund balance or a funding a match requirement. The sewer study out of the ARC Regional Commission The county has a prescribed match based on our income levels. We are at the lowest level. Here, I believe we're 20%, 30% match for the, about 30% match for anything that comes out of ARC. So it depends on the funding stream, and then, of course, depends on the restrictions that go along with it, how you receive those funds, how it's allocated, the bidding processes, et cetera.
So some of the process here, and I know grants and they're all confusing and they all work differently, but some of the federal money that we're getting is, my understanding is that we will get that money, but we have to spend our own money up front first and then we get paid back. So if we get those grants, do we not have to decide where that money's coming from to be able to do the work, to then to apply to get the money back?
But my answer will be, it depends. And I'll qualify that much like the sewer study. The sewer study, as I understand the funding requirements, we are eligible to request advanced funding to do portions of that. So it depends on where those allocations come from. We've not yet seen the THUD expectations of how we draw those funds. The government's good on it, making the awards, and that's, how good government works. They give you the award, but they're slow on giving you the directions on how to access and recover the funds. But it will depend on the source of funding, what we need to do for that, and also what we're looking at as far as a matching requirement. So.
I have a question about the match too, Gretchen. Sorry.
Hearing voices, I can't figure it out.
With this noise in the background. And on many grants, if it's federally funded and then state fundings, then you can use either or for match at different times. But I'm looking at our economic development balance of that $5,960,000. How much of that balance left there is needed for match, or what other type of project is? I mean, it's not a lot of money left.
No,
I mean, it's a lot, but.
It's a lot of money, and it's not. You're correct. When we looked at the, there was a rationale behind the number that was set aside for economic development, and that related pretty closely, or was tied pretty closely with the study that we had for the build out and expansion and completion of projects at the Gateway Center. So that's where a lot of that funding was allocated. It does not preclude you from adding additional funds to economic development, starting a set aside, looking at where we're going to be. But so is it earmarked specifically for that project? No, that's your decision where it's going to go. That was kind of the baseline based on the CPL study that we had for the build out of the hotel, the road, 2 restaurants, water for the water storage system for the fire suppression, et cetera. So, and that did not include any of the funds that we've gone after at the state or the federal level and or state. So we've, in the sewer study in particular, we're using some of the match money that's required. We got the state grant, which requires a match. So that's how we're at that 240 as a match. So.
Okay, now with this remaining balance, and this might be a conflict with county money in that, as we move forward to start this economic development organization, can any of that money be utilized in there to help move this endeavor forward?
That I would defer that back to the board, because the funds can only be allocated by the board. Is it eligible? That's a decision that you all can make.
That's probably where you're going to need the more legal research on our end to see.
Okay, all right.
And
thank you.
I think Tim did a great job outlining this. You guys have done a great job. This is all money you've spent this term, and that's amazing. There's still a lot of work left to do, especially when it comes to the Gateway area. And this, that water line improvement, IIJA, that is just the water tank or water tower, whatever you want to call it. You still have to build out the septic or sewer, whatever it's going to be called, package plant, that's the word, and finish the water line and the road and all that. And those costs are going to probably exceed the original $7.5 million you put in there. That was a low estimate. You're probably going to put more in. You're also tying some of that back to DPW and our own facilities. And how you fund that, I know Terry's kind of recommended that we look at that and making sure that we've done all the homework we need to do, so that if we need to bond it, we can bond it. But probably you're going to be funding it with a mix of fund balance, grants, and bond as a last result. So those are decisions that will have to play out, and I think DPW is going to be talking more about that next month on the total project cost of what they're looking at. But I think Terry also had an answer on advancements.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify the part that you were asking about allocations and money coming in and coming out. We do not wait for the money to come in. When we come to you and ask for budget modification, we will come to you for this whole, in particular, this water line improvement. We have not come forward with you, to you for a budget modification yet. So that is not in your budget yet. So once it's determined where that match is going to come from, whether that's going to come from this 7.5 million or somewhere else, then we will come to you and we will have the budget modification. But we do not wait for the feds to pay for us. We could never do that. We use the cash we have on
Yeah.
hand, fund the project, and then we wait for that
For that money to come back in.
to
Yes.
repay ourselves.
Which
So-
could take a while.
Right, and we do that though for our entire budget. You
Okay.
have to remember that grants that come in for DSS, grants that come in for different things, we could never possibly wait for the cash.
Right.
Because we wouldn't do anything then. So I just wanted to be clear on that we set up the budgets, we spend the budgets as allocated and awarded, and then we claim and get the money back to us.
And some of those come in quicker than others.
Right.
We've waited a couple of years for some reimbursements, correct?
Correct, yeah. Some of that DASNY money, we waited 5 years to get that money for the third floor. So, yeah, there's sometimes a long haul
Yeah.
on that, but.
And I think it's good for all of us to be aware of all of that. And it's not just easy money. Sounds great when we get all these grants, but there's a lot to it, and matching and ties up other funds for this. And I was just trying to get something in writing so we can all see it, because we have done a lot, accomplished a lot, and it's hard to keep track of this. So I thank you for this. This was very helpful for me.
How about Southern Tier West, or what's the other one, the Appalachian?
The ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission. As those opportunities come up, we try to chase those dollars. That's where Delta has been an integral part of our funding operation, because they have, that $90,000 contract brought in well over $2 million this year. And while we could do a lot of that work in-house, they are very beneficial to us in making sure we chase those dollars and we get those pieces taken care of. And we spend a fair amount of time with Delta. We're on a conference call with them at least once a month. We had one this morning, looking at some other pieces. So without chasing those federal dollars, we could really be looking at eating into the fund balance that we'll need to front some of these federal projects and some of the other pieces that's why we have a fund balance, why we want to do that.
And they have a good working relationship with our U.S. senators and our congressmen too.
Correct.
I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
discussion. Okay, next item, we have a couple action items. The first up is to accept and budget grant funds with the Appalachian Region Commission related to the Allegheny County-wide Trails Master Plan. And we actually talked about that a little bit earlier. Do I have a motion?
Hanchett will move.
Hayfield, second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say that this really is a great move in kind of developing what we have in this county that are our natural resources. And not only are we taking care of our beauty and land, it's also an economic development driver, bringing people in and that niche coming in to enjoy the trails. And I know our chairman has sponsored trailheads on our county land too. So as we continue to develop that, I think it will still bring more people in. So I'm totally in favor of this.
Okay, I do have a question, and I don't want to belabor it, but there is a $30,000 that we have to come up with. What is the process, or when do we decide, and our county treasurer. When do we decide where that money comes from?
Okay. That $30,000 is an in-kind match, so it's not any additional money that
Okay.
we have to front up. It will be taken from general expenses that we normally would incur.
Okay.
And you
thank
just work that into
And
the
we just
budget.
work, yeah, we just work it in.
Yeah, we had built that into the original budget as part of planning, mileage, staff,
Okay,
supplies.
all right, so we can mark that over here on this sheet, in kind. All right. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion's carried. Carrie, you're right up here. So the next up is a request to fill a planner.
Yes. My planner moved to a different department in the county, and so that has opened up that position, and I'd like to request to fill and subsequent positions as needed.
Do we have a motion?
Hanchett will move.
Ricketts Swales will second.
Any further discussion? Any questions for Carrie? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Carrie, did you have an announcement to make? Sorry.
The planning board meeting that was scheduled for this evening has had to be canceled due to a lack of quorum. So don't show up and don't try to Zoom. Or Teams or whatever it is.
Thank you. Okay, next we have an approval to join the Buffalo Niagara Association of Realtors. This is coming from Ashley. And Ashley, you want to speak to this?
I do. So the request is to a new membership for Buffalo Niagara Association of Realtors, which is part of the New York State multiple listing system. The approval for this would allow us access for real-time, current, up-to-date commercial property and real estate that's available inside the county. It also would grant us access to a broader level of realtors outside of our Allegheny County geography. It is in the budget, and so it is available. Annual membership for it is $718.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Ricketts Swales will move that.
Do we have a second?
Ricky, a second.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next up, we have land bank appointments.
Yes, the chairman of the board plans to reappoint the following individuals to a new two-year term commencing October 1st and expiring September 30th, 2026. Those members are Keir Durlam, Darwin Fanton, and Brian Laux. We need a motion to approve those.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, you'll make it.
Kern, second.
I heard a Havy. And who was the second? Okay. Any further discussions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we have the Allegheny County Telecommunications Development Corporation.
Yes, the chairman of the board plans to reappoint Dwight Fanton and Brent Reynolds to a new two-year term, and that also expires September 30th, 2026, and we need a motion to approve those appointments.
Hanchett will move.
Healy will second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. So with that, do we have any unfinished business for today? Do we have anything for the good of the order? If not, I'll ask for an adjournment.
Hanchett will move.
Ricky, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, meeting disjoined.